I'm Josh Larky. This is the Dominator. Welcome in, everybody. Today, I will be analyzing weeks 15, 16, and 17 for the fantasy playoffs and for best ball tournaments on Underdog Fantasy. I'm going to discuss 13 stances that I have rapid fire on a few team schedules that I believe are very good and a few that have me really concerned. And in some cases, I will touch on the very specific players to make it so crystal clear that I like their fantasy playoff schedule. Let's just start off with one player I am very certain has a great schedule. Derrick Henry, now with the Ravens. Week 14, he gets his bye week. The big dog gets to rest. Then he faces the New York Giants on the road, then the Steelers, then the Texans on the road. So he smashes the Giants in New York in week 15. I think they win by a couple touchdowns. This is a 100-yard 2-touchdown, 3-touchdown effort from the big dog, quite possibly. I think they beat the Steelers. It's kind of a muddy divisional game, but I think we can still get a decent amount of yardage, multiple touchdowns in his range of outcomes in what should be another pretty convincing win. And then he gets his favorite opponent, the Texans, in week 17. Derrick Henry did struggle last year against the Texans, but a lot of that was simply the Titans' offensive line. Before last year, Derrick Henry had 5 straight games over 125 rushing yards against the Texans. 4 of those 5 games were over 200 rushing yards. Number 2, the 49ers have the nut schedule in the fantasy playoffs. Week 15, they face the Rams. Week 16, they travel to face the Dolphins. And then week 18, they get the Lions at home. Essentially, the 49ers are playing 3 offenses in the Rams, Dolphins, and Lions that can keep pace and make it an interesting shootout type game. And all 3 teams still have question marks in their defensive secondary. We absolutely love that. For all these 49ers players, I've seen rumors Deebo Samuel might get traded. I'm not quite sure exactly how it plays out, but as we see every year injuries happen, yes, today, late May 2024, of course, you're not going to be able to project Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, Ricky Pearsall, George Kittle, all for good seasons. But there's a good chance someone like Deebo Samuel gets traded, players get hurt during the season. You just simply want 49ers on your fantasy teams. Take 3. Najee Harris, bad. Jaylen Warren, good. On a serious note, if we look at the Steelers' final 3 games for the fantasy season, week 15, at the Eagles, week 16 at the Ravens, week 17 they host the Chiefs. I mean, holy shit, folks. You're the Steelers, you have to face the Eagles, Ravens, Chiefs. These are 3 games that I assume the Steelers lose. And I simply don't want the grinder back in Najee Harris. I'd much rather have the guy that was 5th among all running backs in receptions last year. That was Jaylen Warren. That is the guy that I want on the Steelers for the fantasy playoff stretch run for those best ball tournaments on Underdog Fantasy. Number 4, the Cardinals have a brutal schedule until their bye week. The fantasy playoffs, at least for their running game, looks pretty good. Let's actually just go through all their opponents until their bye week. Like I said, it's a brutal schedule. At the Bills, loss. Hosting the Rams, probably a loss. Hosting the Lions, loss. Hosting the Commanders, maybe they sneak a win there. I lean Cardinals. At the Niners, loss. At the Packers, loss. Host the Chargers, loss. At the Dolphins, loss. Host the Bears, loss. Host the Jets, loss. I think they're losing most of those games. Obviously, I don't actually think they're going to lose all those games necessarily. If I had to choose win or loss, I'd say they're more likely to lose all of the games that I said they were going to lose. Then they get their bye week. Then it starts to get pretty good for James Conner and Trey Benson. They're round 3 rookie, because at Seattle, at the Vikings, then back hosting Seattle. So 3 winnable games, Seattle, Minnesota, Seattle. Then they host the Patriots in week 15. They travel to Carolina to face the Panthers in week 16. And then they go on the road to face the Rams in week 17. So if we look at that fantasy playoff schedule, Patriots, Panthers, I think the Cardinals beat both those teams. That's going to be good for the running game. I think those could even be blowouts potentially. I think the Cardinals have an ascending offense. And then the Rams in week 17. The Rams lost Aaron Donald, and you might be able to run against them this upcoming season. Take number 5. Titans stacks could be money. I think the Titans lose all 3 games in the fantasy playoffs, but I think there's some high scoring potential there. We've got 2 dome games, and then the third game is in Jacksonville, where there's usually decent weather in December. So we've got at the Colts week 15. You can throw on the Colts. It's either the Colts, I believe it's a retractable roof, so it's either a dome game, or if there's good weather, it's just a good weather game. At the Jaguars, probably a good weather game, another questionable secondary. And then they host the Texans. And I think in general, where we should be optimistic about the Titans' ability to pass on all 3 divisional opponents that they're probably going to be trailing against. I think the AFC South is one of the best divisions in football. So I think the Titans facing that gauntlet of their opponents, it could be good for the passing game. It could be good for Will Levis, Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, maybe even Chigozie Okonkwo. Depending on if Tony Pollard or Tajay Spears is heavily involved in the passing game, one of those guys might hit. Now, before we hit take number 6, I have a viral tweet on Twitter now. It's at 1.5 million views and counting. I put out my win-loss predictions for every NFL team. My Twitter is JLarky Tweets. It is my pinned tweet. And speaking of the Titans fans are pissed because I predicted the Titans to go 6-11. Their win total in the betting markets is 6.5. Juice to the under. Essentially, betting markets are telling you they think the Titans go 6-11. I have them at 6-11. In that thread on Twitter, I go through my process step by step. I outline why I don't actually have any flaming hot takes in this process, because I really don't. And I tell you exactly how I view all 32 NFL teams. I give you win probabilities for all 32 teams in all 272 games. Trust me, my team tiers, the standings, it's well worth the read. It is my pinned tweet. I don't say that about too many things. This is something that I put about 50 hours worth of research into. It's at 1.5 million views on Twitter. So good chance a lot of you have seen it, but if not, I think it's worth the read. Genuinely. I wouldn't recommend something that's going to be a waste of your time. Number 6, Patriots budget stacks. Good. You draft rookie Drake May, and then these guys are all going, like, even Drake May, round 15, 16, 17, 18 at Best Ball Mania drafts. Rookie wide receiver, Jalen Polk and Javon Baker. Tight end, Hunter Henry. Veteran receiver, Kendrick Bourne. I think the Patriots lose their week 15, 16, and 17 games, but there's no secondaries that are too intimidating to me right now, and I think they're going to trail in all 3 of these. At the Cardinals in week 15, at the Bills in week 16, and then against the Chargers in week 17. I think there's a chance the Patriots have Drake May letting it rip, and there's 3 secondaries there that might be exploitable. Number 7, Lions schedule. Bad. Now, before we get into their schedule, let's just talk about Jared Goff's home road splits. I don't usually like to do splits, but every year it's alarming just how bad Jared Goff is on the road compared to at home. So let's look at the past 2 years. That's 17 games at home, 17 games on the road. At home, 277 pass yards per game. On the road, 253. So it's still a lot of road passing yards, but that's definitely a drop. At home, he's averaging nearly 8 yards per pass attempt. That's only at 7.2 on the road. So on the road, roughly a league average quarterback with his efficiency, maybe a cut above, kind of average. At home, MVP candidate. And then we get to the touchdown interception ratio. He's thrown 9 interceptions on the road, or 9 interceptions at home in 17 games, 10 interceptions on the road. 9 versus 10, very, very similar. But 17 passing touchdowns on the road, 42 at home. Essentially, he's averaged 1 passing touchdown per game on the road, but 2.5, over twice as many, 2.5 times as many passing touchdowns at home. And the 2 matchups in week 16 and week 17 where all the money's getting won in fantasy football and best ball. Oh boy. Week 16 at the Chicago Bears. Could be a bad weather game in Chicago. The Chicago Bears were a top 5 overall defense down the stretch last year. And then in week 17 at the 49ers. You're facing potentially 2 top 5 defenses on the road with Jared Goff. This is certainly less than ideal for bullish Lions drafters. One thing I am bullish on, though, is Underdog Fantasy.
This episode is made possible by Underdog Fantasy, and Underdog Fantasy is the leader in best ball. When you go to join an Underdog Fantasy best ball draft, it fills very quickly, especially now. It's Best Ball Mania season, baby. Best Ball Mania 5. I can't believe they're at Best Ball Mania 5 already. $15 million in prizes. They're giving out $15 million with $1.5 million to first. Playing in best ball leagues makes you better. It helps train you on player value and strategy. And Underdog offers a lot more than just best ball contests. They offer pick'ems. My new favorite, the golf pick'ems. But they have the NBA pick'ems, baseball pick'ems going on throughout the offseason. Hit the pick'ems, back to best ball, hit the pick'ems. So use promo code Underworld. Promo code Underworld gets you a 50% deposit bonus up to $250. So they've increased the maximum deposit bonus. It was $100. Now it's up to $125. When you get the Underdog app, use promo code Underworld and go draft your ass off.
Welcome back, everyone. This is the Dominator. I'm Josh Larky. Stance number 8 of 13. Brock Bowers. We like this schedule. Week 15, the Las Vegas Raiders' new tight end. Week 15, he gets the Falcons. They're one of the worst linebacking cores in the entire NFL. Week 16, the Jaguars. These are both home games, Falcons and Jaguars. So it's in the Las Vegas Raiders dome. Week 17 or week 16 against the Jaguars. Their pass rush duo of Josh Allen and Travon Walker combined for 27.5 sacks last year. They're going to generate a pass rush on this mediocre Raiders offensive line. I foresee short passes and screens to Brock Bowers. And then week 17, the Saints, Pete Werner, Willie Gay. This is possibly the worst outside linebacker duo in the NFL of the Saints. It's on the road, but it's okay. The Saints still play in a dome. Demario Davis is a star at middle linebacker. He's been a star in the past, but he's 35 years old. It could clock could strike midnight at any time for him. And safety Tyrann Mathieu is 32 years old. It's an aging and not particularly great defense right now. Brock Bowers is probably going to have his usage increase as the season goes along, as most rookie pass catchers do. And we like that week 15, 16, 17 schedule. Stance 9. Jonathan Taylor can feast. Week 15 at the Broncos. The Broncos are my pick to be the worst team in the NFL this upcoming season. I like almost no position groups on this Broncos team. I'm currently living in Denver. It's atrocious. The Broncos are terrible. They were the worst run defense last year. I think Jonathan Taylor runs all over them. Week 16 faces the Titans. I think the Titans are not a good team. I don't believe in the defense. And I think Mike Vrabel was sneakily one of the better NFL head coaches. I think his loss is going to really open Titans fans' eyes to how they were overperforming. And you might be like, oh, Mike Vrabel, I didn't like this or that. And a lot of people are trying to hype up the new guy. Really? The new guy, the new head coach for the Titans, Brian Callahan, the former offensive coordinator of the Bengals, who wasn't really on anyone's head coaching radar as like a must candidate to interview, to get the job. Callahan is going from Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins to Will Levis, Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins. That's a steep drop off. I simply just don't believe in the Titans in general, on offense, on defense. So I think the Colts blow out the Broncos. I think they beat the divisional opponent, the Titans, in week 16. And then week 17 at the New York Giants, another one where Giants run defense has struggled in recent years. I think they're going to blow out the Giants. Colts are a fringe playoff contender. I think Jonathan Taylor closes out the season with 3 good games. I think the Colts go 3-0 down the stretch. People, if you want more content from me, if you already checked out the win-loss standings prediction thread where I walk through exactly how to calculate win totals, how I do it myself step by step so you can recreate that process, and you just want a formal article not on Twitter, go to playerprofiler.com. I have an article up on the site right now on the Chargers. I discuss the Chargers ADPs in best ball and how they simply don't make sense when you look at the Chargers schedule, their win totals to teams with similarly priced players via ADP. I look at the Chargers offensive and ecosystem and environment. I look at the Chargers defense. I outline a very bullish and I think a pretty realistic case for why the Chargers are one of the 2 or 3 most undervalued teams overall in best ball just for the entire season. Playerprofiler.com. Check that article out. It's free to read. 10. Stance 10. The Broncos passing game. We might like it, at least for the fantasy playoffs. So I'm not really a Bo Nix guy necessarily, but there's a chance Bo Nix, the rookie, is comfortable. He's settled in. He's rolling by the end of the year. And the Broncos get 3 teams that will likely have below average secondaries in 2024 and 3 opponents who project to beat the Broncos. Week 15, they host the Colts. The Colts have a bad secondary, but I think they're going to be a pretty decent team. So they're going to be able to pass against the Colts, but they're going to lose. Week 16 at the Chargers. Only the Washington Commanders gave up more pass yards per game last year than the Chargers. On draft day, the Chargers did not address their defensive secondary until the 5th round. I think the Chargers beat them, and I think the Broncos can pass against them. And then week 17 at the Bengals. Bengals, another team that's defense is just in shambles. They quietly gave up the most yards per pass attempt in the entire NFL last year. I like defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo. The problem is he's just dealing with a severe lack of talent. So the Broncos have 3 pretty tasty matchups for their pass game to end the season. Take number 11. The Dolphins offense has a tough schedule. Week 15 at the Texans. It's a tough Houston secondary, but it could be a high-scoring game. That one's not bad, but it's not really great either. I think it's fine. But then week 16, they host the 49ers. We don't like to see that. We don't like to see that. We don't want to see Tua Tagovailoa facing that pass rush. We don't want to see that. And then week 17 at the Browns. This is likely a bad weather Cleveland game against a good pass defense. I'm just generally concerned about this Dolphins end of season schedule. I said that last year about the Dolphins schedule, and sure enough, you weren't getting that many fantasy points from this passing game down the stretch last year either. It fizzled a little bit. Now, with my win-loss record predictions at J Larky Tweets on Twitter, you can actually look and see I don't love the Dolphins playoff schedule, but I do actually think they finish 1 game ahead of the Bills in the standings, despite a tough late season stretch. I outline exactly why I believe that to be the case. I don't think it's a hot take. Check it out. Stance 12 out of 13. We're almost done, folks. Oh, it's been a wild. It's been a good 20 minutes with you, good people. I think the Bengals running backs have a good fantasy playoff schedule. I just like them in general with their ADPs. Zach Moss, Chase Brown, they're cheap. And their week 15, 16 schedule. Week 15 at the Titans. Bengals should win this game. I think they'll be able to run on the Titans. Week 16, they host the Browns. The Browns' pass defense looks pretty good. Their run defense was questionable at times last year. I also think the Bengals beat the Browns and put up some points against them. And then week 17, beautiful. They host the Broncos. Last year's NFL worst run defense travels to Cincinnati. Bengals should blow out the Broncos. I could see Zach Moss scoring multiple touchdowns, having 100 yards on the ground there. We like that playoff schedule. And the final, take 13. The best for last. Falcons running backs. Good. We love Bijan Robinson. So first off, I did the strength of schedule metrics. That's in my win totals analysis thread on Twitter. And the Falcons, I believe, have the easiest overall schedule by multiple metrics that I've created that I outlined in that thread. So first off, Falcons, easy schedule. Then if we just look at overall the schedule and kind of how it culminates with the fantasy playoffs, weeks 1, 2, and 3, the Falcons don't have a great time because they host the Steelers, they travel to face the Eagles, and then they host the Chiefs. Hopefully they beat the Steelers and then maybe they lose to the Chiefs and the Eagles. But then it gets much easier. Hosting the Saints, hosting the Buccaneers, at the Panthers, hosting the Seahawks, at the Buccaneers. 5 games that I think they can win. They host Dallas, they probably lose that game. But then they travel to the Saints, they travel to the Broncos, bye week, they host the Chargers, they travel to the Vikings. That's a lot of winnable games. The only games in that stretch I think that they most likely would lose at the Eagles, hosting the Chiefs, hosting the Cowboys. So essentially a ton of winnable games there. I actually think all their other games are winnable. Weeks 15, 16, 17, the fantasy playoffs. At the Raiders. You can run on the Raiders. Hosting the Giants. We've talked about the Giants a few times already. And then at the Commanders. These are 3 games I believe the Falcons win. They potentially win them by multiple scores against the Raiders, Giants, and Commanders. The Raiders game is in a dome, so we don't have to worry about bad weather. They host the New York Giants, so we don't have to worry about bad weather in New York. And then they travel to the Commanders, whose defense should just be terrible once again this year for week 17. Cannot get enough of drafting running back Bijan Robinson in the mid-first round on Underdog Fantasy. I'm Josh Larky. This is the Dominator. That was 13 stances in just over 20 minutes. Thank you, everyone.
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.